The Native American Woman and the Model T Ford by Dennis M. Morrison, Sr. Summer is like the very best time of the year. There's nothing I enjoy more than taking off my shirt and letting the beautiful sunshine warm and tan my skin. That makes me feel so awesome and totally alive. But there's only one thing that can make a hot, humid summer day better, and that is to go to the woods digging for Indian artifacts. That has been a hobby of mine since I was a young boy. These outings got even more exciting after David came into my life and began going with me on my quest. By the way, Davy is my 7-year-old son. He was not really crazy about the woods because he hated mosquitoes and other insects. Still, he ventured off with me just so he could be with Dad. And you know what? Nothing could make me happier. The day in question was in June, and to my delight it was unusually hot and humid. I will never forget that day, as it was the beginning of some very strange things in my life. To say these events were enigmatic is an understatement. Even in thinking about them now, they still make the hair stand up on the back of my neck and give me goosebumps. That day began quite normally, though. Before Davy and I left, I made sure we had plenty of insect repellent, drinks, and a picnic lunch. The picnic lunch was a tradition with us. If we went out to the woods, then we ate in the woods. We had driven about 10 miles out in the country when Davy asked, "Dad, did you bring my toy bag?" Why do kids always seem to think of something you forgot just when you're far enough away that you won't turn around? I shook my head. Nope, I forgot them this time, Davy, but you're a guy. You're a dude. You can make it without them just this once, right? He looked up at me and gave me that goofy grin of his. You a geek, Dad. Then he slugged me in the shoulder. He got a discouraged look on his small face, but agreed that he could do without them just for today. David liked helping me find things, that is, as long as we were finding them. But sometimes we did not find any, and he got sort of bored. That is where the toy bag came in. Then he muttered something so uncharacteristic for him that I burst out laughing so hard my stomach hurt. He said, "Well, it's a good thing I was born a boy, or I guess I wouldn't have anything to play with in the woods." When I finally stopped laughing, I asked him, "What did you mean by that, Davy?" And he responded with a silly grin and a long drawn-out, "You know what I mean, Dad." I let the subject drop right there. He seemed just a wee bit young to be thinking about such things. Nonetheless, it sounded really funny coming from him. As luck would have it, we were coming up on an old green cement block farmhouse, and out in front was a yard sale sign. The wheels in my head began turning. An idea. Pulling off the road, I got out of the truck and yelled for Davy to stay put. "I'll be right back," I yelled. There was an elderly woman minding the sale. I swear she was a dead ringer from Mammy Yoakum from the Lil Abner comic strips. All she needed was a corncob pipe to complete the look. She asked, "You looking for something in particular, honey?" "Yeah, looking for some toys for my little boy. Do you have any toys?" And she thought for a moment, and then replied, "Been no kids here since way back in the 60s, but I have one toy. In fact, it was my husband's before he died, God rest his soul." She went to a table and did some rummaging about. Soon she returned with an awesome-looking cast-iron Model T Ford car. I was afraid to ask how much she wanted for it. I was sure it had to be worth quite a bit of money. She looked over at my truck. "That your boy there?" "Yep, that's Davy." "Well, tell you what, hon. My husband Abner would be happy if I just gave the car to the boy." She shoved the antique vehicle into my hands. "Take it to him, and tell him to have fun." I thanked her and started back for my truck, trying hard not to laugh. Her looking like Mammy Yoakum and having a husband named Abner. What were the chances? Life is so full of silly quirks. When Davy saw the car, he was all excited. "For me? It's old," he said. "You bet it's old, so take good care of it. That nice old lady gave it to you, Davy. Now you'll have something to play with if you get bored in the woods." "Thanks," he yelled out the window to the lady, and we pulled away as the lady was smiling and waving at him. To say something was peculiar about her is an understatement, but I just couldn't put my finger on exactly what it was. My favorite place to hunt artifacts was on Small Creek, which leads into Small Lake. A lot of smalls, huh? Well, there's one more. Small Lake is at Small Lake, Michigan, a rustic little lakeside town, and it's about 15 miles from where I live at Woods End. We turned off the main road and down a familiar dirt trail, which we followed for about a mile into the woods. The creek was only about 20 feet from us when I stopped the truck. At one time, there'd been a good-sized late woodland village right here. That would date it anywhere between 500 to 1,400 years old. Davy and I got out of the truck, and I took my shovel and sifting screen from the back of the truck. I think we'll dig right here where we stopped. Looks like a good place to me. It's okie dokie with me. I shook my head and gave him a smile. And you call me a geek. Where did you get okie dokie from? Davy just smiled and began making a road in the sand for his car to drive down. While he was busy with that, I began carefully examining the ground for any signs that might be productive of a spot to dig. I didn't have to look long. "Hey, Davy," I called, "look at this. A really nice piece of an Indian pot." I was excited, but Davy was having too much fun playing with his car that he had named Mishki Wheezy. How he came up with an Indian name for an old car, I have absolutely no idea. I marked out a 5x5 square on the ground and began carefully removing the surface sand, which was full of pottery shards and flakes of flint from the production of arrowheads and other stone tools. The dirt beneath was black and had a waxy feel to it. This had been a hearth, a campfire, maybe as far back as 1,000 years ago. I was really getting excited. Davy left his car on the road he made and came over to see what I was finding. He helped me pull out several stone knives from the ground and some large pieces of a cooking pot and a few odd scrapers, all pretty nice items. We went at it for a good 2 hours, and by then Davy was looking hot and hungry. "Do you think it's time, son?" I asked. "I think it's time, Dad," he replied. See, I figured my success in hunting relics was due in part to the fact that we respected the people that at one time lived on the site. So whenever we went digging, we would leave a gift in the hole for the spirits of the people that might still be there. Usually we left tobacco, which is a traditional Native American Indian offering. From my backpack, I took a small clay pot that I found on this site many years before, and then I removed a few cigarettes from my pack and broke them into the pot. About this time there came a loud rumble of thunder. Neither of us had noticed that dark clouds were moving in, and they were coming quickly. "We'd better make this fast, son, or we're going to get rained on." I took some dried sage I had also brought and crumpled it into the tobacco, then added a few fragments of white birch bark. I lit the mixture and it began smoking. We took turns passing the pot over and around the hole that I had dug. I and my son thanked the spirits of the people who called this place home. "Thank you for the gifts you have given us, and we leave this gift for you." Then I emptied the smoldering contents of the pot into the hole, threw in a few more cigarettes, and then filled the hole in. By the time the hole was filled, it had begun to rain. Lightning was flashing in the sky and struck loudly somewhere nearby. I gathered up our finds, my backpack, and took Davy's hand and dashed into the truck as the tempest really broke loose. The storm was still growing strong when we got home. Davy and I ran into the house, but not without getting soaked first. I noticed he did not have his car with him. In fact, I did not remember seeing him have it in the truck. "Well, where's your car, Davy?" I asked. He got that dweeby look on his face and told me sheepishly, "I buried it." "You what?" I exclaimed. "You left tobacco. I left my car. Do you think they'll like it, Dad?" I couldn't get mad at him because his heart was in the right place. "Well, yeah, of course they'll like it, Davy. That was a really nice thought, but inside I was thinking, how could you do that? That car must be worth at least a couple $100. I decided I'd make a special trip back out there when Davy was at school and retrieve the car. The storm continued on after dinner and looked like it would be an all-nighter. We dried off and watched a couple of old episodes of Gilligan's Island. We both started yawning, and before I knew it, Davy was sound asleep with his head on my lap. I gently picked him up and carried him into his room and laid him on his bed, and I covered him with his favorite blanket and then headed to my own room, where the thunder and lightning and rain lulled me into a deep sleep. I couldn't have been sleeping very long. I opened my eyes, and it was still dark, but the storm had stopped. What woke me was Davy. I heard him laughing and talking to someone in his room. Right away I panicked and flew out of bed, down the hall, and threw the door open to his room. Davy was sitting in the middle of the bed, and he looked up at me innocently and he asked, "What's wrong, Dad?" "Who were you talking to? Was somebody in here with you?" "Yes," he said with a bright smile. "Mishki Wheezy was here, and she brought me this gift." From under the cover, Davy took out the car that he said he had buried back at the dig site. I was a little angry. "You know it's wrong to lie, Davy. You told me you buried your car. Then you went out to the truck in the middle of the night and got it." Davy looked really upset. "I didn't lie. She brought it back to me. Mishki Wheezy brought it back to me to play with, and she told me something, too." "Oh, stop it, Davy. You want me to believe that the ghost of an Indian woman dead for maybe 1,000 years came here just to bring your toy car back to you?" He looked indignant. "It's true, Dad, and she told me there would be a special present for me when we go back to dig where she used to live." I was tired and quite annoyed. I never knew Davy to lie to me, not even once. This, though, well, this was something I just could not believe. For some reason, the hairs on the back of my neck stood up again, and I got goosebumps. I felt uncomfortable all of a sudden. Maybe it was because Davy looked so sincere. Well, maybe you were dreaming. I suppose you could have been sleepwalking and went out to the truck to get the car. No, I didn't do that. Mishky Weezy brought it to me, Dad. I wouldn't lie to you. Well, now I was getting chills even though the room was still quite warm, and at that moment I wanted to get out of Davy's room and take him with me. There was a very eerie feeling there. Come on, Davy, you can come sleep with me. We'll sort all of this out in the morning. I reached out my hand, and he took it. We went to my room and back to bed. Davy yawned and then said, Can we go back tomorrow? Huh? Can we go back tomorrow? I want to see what Mishky Weezy left for me. We'll see. For now, let's just get a little more sleep, okay? Okie dokie, he replied. It didn't take long, and we were both back out cold. I swear, though, Davy snored louder than his mom used to. In fact, that's what woke me up. The sun was just beginning to rise. The room was already hot and humid, even with the windows wide open. I looked over at Davy, the original nasal Hazel. He looked so innocent. He was cradling that car in his arms, and there went those chills again because, you see, we had left the car in his room last night. I decided a return trip to the dig site might prove to him that what he thought had happened in his room was nothing more than a dream. Deep down inside, I have to admit, there was a curiosity in me. After all, this was more than just a little bit strange. I let Davy sleep till about 10 and then woke him. He was very excited to learn that we were going back to the dig site. In fact, I had all I could do to get him to settle down and eat a bowl of cereal before we left. I was totally confused when we drove past the old green farmhouse. I had stopped there just the day before, yet it was deserted and looked as if it had been for many years. The grass was tall and unkempt, and many windows were broken out. There was no Mammy Yokin and no yard sale. This was weird indeed, and good cause for the swift return of the goosebumps and chills. Come on, Dad, go faster. I want to see what Mishky Weezy left me. She said she made it herself. If I go any faster, I'll get a ticket. We'll be there before much longer, Davy. As promised, we soon arrived at the dirt trail. We were lucky not to get stuck, as the trail had turned to mud from the storm. Slipping and sliding about, we finally made it to where we had dug the day before. Davy bounced out of the truck. I got my shovel out of the back and asked him where he thought we should dig first. He pointed to the same spot as yesterday. Working my way down, I went as deep as the tobacco offering we had left, but found nothing. Even the offering was gone. I looked at him and shrugged my shoulders. Nothing there, Davy. See, you might just have dreamed it all. That means you didn't lie to me. Now why don't you just admit it? You dreamed the whole thing. No, I didn't. It has to be here somewhere. Mishky Weezy wouldn't lie to me. She's too nice to lie. She sort of looked like the lady who waved to me at the from the yard sale yesterday. Stand back. There went the goosebumps and chills again. But what connection could an ancient Indian woman who lived 1,000 years ago have with an old woman who lived at a deserted farmhouse? I needed to find an answer. If not, this would haunt me until I did, if I ever did. Davy exclaimed, Look, Dad, there she is. I turned to see where Davy was pointing, but there was nothing there except an old dead tree. Davy, why are you making these things up? There isn't anyone there. You can see that for yourself. But she was there, Dad. She was pointing to the creek bank. Let's go see what's there. He was off in a dash, and I was right behind him. We got to the bank, which was actually a 20-foot bluff overlooking the creek below. There was a tree whose roots were pretty well exposed, and looked as though a good wind would topple it into the creek. A small animal of some sort had burrowed in under the roots and kicked out a lot of yellow sand from where it had decided to make its home, and something caught my eye. Davy and I cautiously, so we would not slide down into the creek, made our way over the bank to investigate. I was surprised at what we found there. Lots and lots of pottery shards. Maybe this is your gift, Davy. I don't think so, Dad. Let's dig back a little and see if there's anything else. The boy was determined. I had to give him credit for that. So in hopes the hole was not made by a badger or some other critter that would rip my arm off, given the chance, I dug into the soft yellow sand. When Davy saw it was safe, he dug into the sand also. Smart kid. He waited till see if I got bit. I feel something, Davy exclaimed. I just hope it isn't something with big sharp teeth, I replied. He rolled his eyes. I don't think so. He pulled out What he pulled out left me speechless. No, astounded. In fact, I rubbed my eyes thinking I was seeing things. It was crude to be sure, but there was no mistake at what my son had in his hands. I knew I could not disbelieve what Davy had been telling me now. There in his hands was a crudely made Model T Ford of fired clay just like the pot shards were made of. "Wow, Dad, look at this." I shook my head. "I'm sorry I didn't believe you, son. Somehow Missy Sweezy got the car you left in the ground and brought it back to you, and she made another one. I can't believe what I'm saying, but there's no other explanation. I told you she had left a gift for me," he said so matter-of-factly. I was relieved that my son had not lied to me, though that would have been easier than trying to figure it all out. I was a little ashamed I had not believed him, but then who would have under the circumstances? What truly bothered me is I would never likely understand just what had taken place and why. There was no way to understand. What was this connection between this ancient lady of the woodlands and my little son? Well, all that was about 12 years ago. Davy is off to college, and I'll not let me call him Davy any longer. It has to be David. But both those cars are here waiting for him to come home because he will never part with them. They're a special bond to someone and something somewhere else. Davy had connected with another human being that had lived on that old creek bank maybe more than 1,000 years before. I never figured out the connection to that old green farmhouse. It is just too illogical to understand. Those 2 days in my life with my son are 2 days I will never ever forget. I know David won't either. And somewhere beyond the misty veil of time, in the life hereafter, an Indian woman named Missy Weesey will never forget us either.